Welcome to Trippy Commentaries and our coverage of the 2014 fantasy football season. It's been a crazy season so far. We've said that every single week. We've tried to put money on some of these games. That hasn't gone well. Where normally we have a little bit better luck, but what can we say? The season's out of control.
Yeah.
Hopefully your team is doing well, and hopefully you're in contention heading towards the fantasy playoffs. I'm RJ, joined up with FPS Kyle.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
What's up, K-Mac? I know it's certainly been out of control. Let's see if we can try to figure out what's going to happen this week. There's a couple guys we need to talk about. First of all, Adrian Peterson. Is he actually going to come back? Will he be available to us in this fantasy season? I'm sure he's probably scooped up already in your league, unless you have him already yourself. Kyle, a couple weeks ago we talked about it. I thought possibly week 14 would be a good spot for us to get him back after they give him probably a couple extra suspensions on top of what he already has. Because the truth of the matter is, guys, he hasn't had a real suspension. Even though he hasn't played any games, he's been paid in full, which means for some reason the NFL is going to suspend him additional games. I don't think they're going to come to any agreement as far as a fine for the games he already missed out on. He was technically already suspended, I guess you can call it.
Yeah.
Even though he was paid in full. Kyle, do you have any predictions? It's really hard to gauge what the hell's going on here.
It is. I mean, this is going to get ugly between the NFL and the NFLPA. Obviously, it's going to become a big thing that's probably going to go on. Now, they say there's supposed to be a decision made here on Saturday. I could see it even going on maybe farther than that because I don't think these two sides are going to agree, and this could cause major issues because, according to the collective bargaining agreement, with the hearing being expedited and he took a lesser charge, now he's got to be let back into the league. So for a fantasy standpoint, I mean, he should already be picked up. I mean, if you got him,
for sure,
keep him. Maybe even use him as trade bait right now if you really need something, because it's looking like right now there's a chance this guy could be playing. Come week 12, week 13, week 14.
As of time recording, still chance that he plays this week, highly doubtful.
Yeah.
And if you do have him, you're trying to get a win this week, I recommend that you try to trade him as fast as you can. Try to trade him even before this news comes out, because I think at this point you can most likely get something valuable, something that's going to help you out this week. So see what you can do if you don't have that that luxury of kind of stashing him for a couple weeks when I think we could see him. But right now it's still 50-50 that he even plays this season. So get what you can if possible. K-Mac, if you had him right now, say you needed a win this week, would you trade him straight up for Emmanuel Sanders?
I would. I honestly would, just because my team is loaded with running backs, and if I need receivers, so I would definitely do that. But even just, say I had a neutral team, I need to win this week, I would definitely make that trade, because Emmanuel Sanders has been great, for at least the past 5 weeks now.
Adrian Peterson, though, if he comes back, we're talking about the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, well, yeah, in some leagues, he was the number 1 pick. Is he going to be at that level when he first comes in? I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say he's not, I know. Through everything he's been through, I'm sure he's gonna, have a little chip on his shoulder and want to show something. I just don't, do we know if this offense is going to be able to cater to him? Are they going to be able to kind of get in that mode of just, power? I mean, we've seen the 2 other running backs in Minnesota have looked pretty good.
Exactly.
Are they that good, or is that offensive line doing a good enough job, and is the play calling correct? Because I mean, this could blow up. Whoever has him, he could end up being the number 1 running back going on the last stretch of the season.
Of course. I mean, come on. Obviously, I think for sure he's going to be incredible if he comes back. We know this. We've seen him in the past.
Yeah.
But is he going to be in there? That's the bottom line. It's one of those things where if he's in there, I think whoever has him struck gold. He's going to be great because it's Adrian Peterson. He has something to prove. We know he's plenty capable of being good, especially with this offense, which is proven to be pretty good in the running game regardless.
And props to those guys who drafted him and kept him all season long, and now might be able to get the benefit of having Adrian Peterson.
The bottom line is that there's a good chance he might not play, though. So, if he doesn't play, he's useless. If he plays, he's great. That's where we stand. I think you're looking at week 14 because once again, they're going to have to give him a couple extra games on top of the games he's already missed. I know it doesn't make a ton of sense, but the fact of the matter is he has to get a true suspension.
Yeah.
And they're going to give him probably 2 games. And that doesn't even make sense either because it's a misdemeanor. He was, I guess, caught. I don't know if he wasn't caught with marijuana, but he admitted to it.
Yeah.
That's not going to look good for him, and that's where a couple games are going to come, but still a shot that he gets no suspensions. Really, we're just throwing shit on the wall at this point.
And now another guy who the NFL is probably going to have to reinstate back in the league is also Ray Rice. Do you think there's a team out there who's even going to try to touch this guy and bring him on their team? There's some teams out there that could use a running back, but
I don't. Do you?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible. I think in this day and age, everything's kind of been swept back under the rug. No one's really talking about it. I mean, the whole thing with Adrian Peterson is like, did you have a problem with it, when it happened, and now you don't have a problem with it now, and he's back allowed in the league. He's not even getting a full year for what he did. That was never really worked out. I understand what he got a charge to, but he did a plea deal. It's we know he's guilty of what he did. Are we accepting him back in the league?
Mm-hmm.
Now what's changed? So with Ray Rice, I see the same thing. I mean, I could see a team who needs him just saying, "Fuck it, we're gonna take him and we're gonna make it seem like we're trying to make him a better person and giving him another chance in life."
It's not gonna matter. He's terrible. He looked no good this year, or at least the small amount of time he had.
Yeah, but
last year obviously looked terrible. And
but he was playing through
on the
injury last
decline.
week, so I mean, hey, if he's completely healthy, his legs are gonna be fresh.
What team could he land on? Best case scenario would be the Broncos, and even if he went there, I still wouldn't be hopeful that he's going to be useful. He would have to learn a playbook wherever he went, and I just don't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, the Ravens would have to. I mean, because he's still. I guess I don't know how that works as far as the contract is concerned, because I think the contract's negated, obviously. What
Yeah, because he's got a lawsuit against the Vikings because they dropped him.
Or
so.
you mean the
Or
Ravens.
the
other
Ravens.
purple team.
Yeah, the other purple team. The Ravens, which, I mean, so I don't see anything ever happening now. There's no way he's going back to the Ravens.
Yeah.
So.
I don't think Ray Rice has any value. No reason to pick him up whatsoever.
Definitely no need to pick him up. But just
Even
keep
if a
an
team
eye,
picks him up.
keep your ear out, and then, you get rumors that he might get signed somewhere.
Somewhere good.
If you're in a 14-person league, which I have one league that I'm in like that, I would take him right now on going on a team just because it's a possibility that he's a number one. It gets really slim there in the running back position in a big, in a deep league like that.
Yeah, I just can't think of any teams that could really use him.
Or is it going to want to deal with all
as a
the shit
contender.
that it's going to bring to the team?
Nobody's
at
going
the
to
end
want
of the
to at all.
season.
And it's not going to happen. Let's be real. It's not going to happen. Ray Rice is not going to be playing until next year, and that might not happen either because he's just not that good anymore. Yeah. When you have guys like C.J. Anderson coming in and playing good out of nowhere, an undrafted free agent,
yeah,
you could pretty much get running backs anywhere nowadays. I mean, look how good Trey Mason looked in college. He goes extremely low to the Rams, and now he's the Rams starter. He hasn't looked that great, but nonetheless, it's a guy that they get super deep. He implement him as the starter, and he's just as good as a lot of these
It could be your future running back.
He's better than Doug Martin, who was drafted in the first round.
Exactly.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Broncos real quick because we brought up C.J. Anderson there.
Yeah.
That's really a weird situation. Ronnie Hillman's injured. We should have saw that coming. The guy's pretty small, and they're trying to use him as a lead back. He gets injured once again. Not the first time he's been injured. Monty Ball will be back this week. C.J. Anderson blew up, and Jawan Thompson is still hanging around because that guy, believe it or not, is actually the best blocking back they have, which means they might want to use him. Can you make any clarity? Do you trust C.J. Anderson this week? I think they might sneakily put Monty Ball in there as a starter.
Yeah, it all depends on how healthy Monty Ball really is. I mean, if he has got his burst and he's back to being close to 100%, then he's probably going to retake the starting role. They went into the season with him as their starting running back for a reason. So, but C.J. Anderson obviously made a case for himself last week.
Better game than Monty Ball's
what he
ever
can
shown.
do in the passing game, which is something I felt The stats are really high, but if you saw like last week how the Broncos started off, they looked terrible in the passing game. Not until they started kind of getting a rhythm going until halfway through the game to the end of the game, they didn't really look that good come out the gate. We're like, oh shit, are they going to get upset again? And it obviously didn't happen, but that element with CJ Anderson in there to catch passes out of the backfield, that's just another weapon for Peyton Manning.
So do you trust him? Would you start him this week?
In a deep league, I wouldn't. 10-person league, no, probably not, unless you have
Because of
somebody
Monty
on
Ball
bot.
or because of Jawan Thompson?
Because of Monty Ball.
Okay.
Just the combo.
I actually really like Thompson. I've picked him up before in our league, just as a speculative pickup. Nothing happened, of course,
Yeah.
but he's still floating. And
He could
he's
be
talented.
he could be a vulture. Goal
Big
line
time.
work, he'll be in there. So,
He actually reminds me a little bit of C.J. Anderson.
but you got to remember, Broncos like to throw the ball as well. When they get goal line like that, they got so many tall guys, they just throw it up to them. So they like to do that as well. But yeah, just because you don't know who it's going to be. I mean, really, I think you could start either one of them, C.J. Anderson or Monty Ball, if you really needed to, and you're probably going to get production out of one of them, maybe even both of them.
I mean, there are some guys on bye this week. No Chris Ivory. So, it's definitely something to think about. C.J. Anderson's going to be picked up all the way around. Many people are going to start the guy. Beware of Monty Ball, but I would start C.J. Anderson if I had no other good number 2 running back. I mean, I've been pretty desperate at running back in my main fantasy league this year, so it's tough to say don't start this guy because a lot of times as a number 2 running back, we're having to get desperate.
Yeah.
As far as the Broncos are concerned, Ronnie Hillman is going to miss, they're saying 2 to 3, possibly even 4 weeks. So they're going to have to get somebody looking good. Monty Ball has not looked good yet. I think they're going to give him another shot, but C.J. Anderson is also going to have that shot to stay the hot hand. Anderson's a must grab, and if he plays that good like he did last week again, then I think that's your guy. It's tough to make the prediction because, once again, I don't think they're going to give up on Monty Ball.
Yeah.
I think he at least is going to be a vulture.
Yep. Now, one guy now going into our next conversation here, Andre Ellington. Now, we saw last week that his numbers kind of came down once Carson Palmer came out of the game. Didn't really get a lot of rushing yards. Kind of had a down week for him, how he's been. With Drew Stanton as a quarterback now, how do you think that's going to affect Ellington going forward? And even Fitzgerald and some of the other weapons in this Cardinals offense.
I think it's a pretty bad downgrade for that offense. Unfortunately, nobody's really talking about it. Now, as far as Andre Ellington's concerned, he's still a running back 1 in a PPR. I think it is a drop down in a non-PPR. I think he goes from a running back 1 to a 2. Obviously,
right,
still a stud.
Their defenses are going to want to stop Ellington now because they know he is their main focal point and make Stanton throw the ball, and that way hoping that he's going to make a bad decision and get some turnovers. So
Absolutely.
They're going to key in on Ellington.
Carson
Ellington, I think, is good
Palmer
enough.
was so good.
Yeah, and I think Ellington's good enough, and I think the offense is good enough to still get Ellington out in open space. That's obviously, their offense kind of thrives on that, getting him out in open space. But he's really been a workhorse too. So I believe Steven Taylor is going to be out again this week. So with that happening, Andre Ellington's still going to get those the goal line carries and has an opportunity.
Well, they have that other guy there, that Grice running back. He played pretty decent. I think they like him a lot as well.
Yeah.
So it's good to see. Because as an Andre Ellington owner, you don't want him to play every down.
Not
you
every
want
down,
him to get some rest.
But within the 5 yard lines, within 5 yards to the goal
Ellington's
line, they want him in there. Before they were, even Ellington said, "Hey, sometimes I need to take a break."
Nothing. That doesn't change anything, though. That's not going to. It's not going to change if you're starting Ellington or not. He's a must-start regardless.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as the rest of the Arizona Cardinals offense, once again, slight downgrade to Ellington just because they're going to have to focus on the running game even more. Carson Palmer was playing incredibly good. He looked very Phillip Rivers-esque the way he went from playing terrible to playing out of his mind. He was really on that level.
Yeah.
If you look at Drew Stanton's stats, they're not impressive at all. Now, he's yet to throw a pick this year, so that's good actually for Ellington's status. I think less turnovers always helps the running backs because then they can matriculate the ball down the field. As far as the wide receivers, this is code blue. Larry Fitzgerald was finally getting back to legit status. I think he's back off the building. I think his status just kind of fell quickly. I don't like him as much. I still like John Brown. I think someone who's probably getting a lot of practice time with new starting quarterback Drew Stanton is John Brown. So I think that'll probably stay as far as a what the fuck flex status. But your other guys there, Michael Floyd has already been droppable.
Yep.
Larry Fitzgerald, scary.
I still think Larry Fitzgerald's probably going to do all right, but I agree, man. John Brown last week had 9 targets. Obviously, Drew Stanton is used to throwing to this guy, and he's going to continue to do it. And John Brown comes up with some big plays. We saw it last week for the victory there. To cap it off, John Brown makes a huge touchdown catch.
It's very similar to Michael Vick, a guy we're going to talk about, in his connection to Jordan Matthews. Same thing, John Brown, Drew Stanton. We've talked about it in the past, Kyle.
Exactly.
Obviously, you were a former quarterback, and you weren't always on the first team, so you know damn well team 2, you're playing with the third wide receiver. That's probably going to be your boy if you get into the game because you'll just have that natural chemistry.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we want now. We've always seen some of these quarterbacks, they come in off the bench in a game, and they look okay going out. But when we see their very first week that they start and the defense actually is planning for them and preparing for them, we sometimes see these quarterbacks take an absolute shit. So definitely be cautious this week if you are thinking for some reason of just because of the offensive weapons he has around him, they might put up points. But not only from that standpoint, the other players as well. Ellington, Fitzgerald, John Brown.
Ellington doesn't count.
Ellington's
the rest.
So Ellington right now, the only guy that is, Stanton free. He's still starting, Stanton is starting.
Which is too bad because that's another offense that basically gets shot by a cannon from us. I mean, look at the offenses we have that are useless. The Rams, you're going to start Mason if you're desperate. Jared Cook, you got lucky last week if for some reason you started him.
Yeah.
They lost Brian Quick, so they got no useful wide receivers. And now there's so many other teams that are getting hit by the cannon. We need these teams that are super productive. It's funny how you have, say for example, the Bucks, where they're a terrible team, but at least their fantasy offense is productive. We're able to start Bobby Rainey in some leagues. Of course, Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson are actually doing pretty good.
Exactly.
Mike Evans a little bit more so, but Vincent Jackson's still staying pretty productive compared to other guys who are throwing out donuts out of nowhere.
Exactly.
And it's just funny how you have these teams that we can't harvest any fantasy goodness out of them at all. And one of them, the Jets. Let's go ahead and change up the conversation to them. Vick surprisingly looked pretty good.
I've been saying
Percy
it, man.
Harvin did not look good. I expected a little bit more from him last week. Eric Decker, what the hell's going on here? Chris Ivory did nothing. All of a sudden, Chris Johnson's looking a little bit better, but that's not good at all for Ivory stock.
Nope.
What do you make from the Jets? Starting off with Vick, I mean, maybe in a 12-team league?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's going to get rushing yards. He's going to get, at least 200 yards passing, and he's going to get some touchdowns. How many turnovers is he going to have? That's the question mark. I thought he looked pretty good last week. I've been saying this for a while. I don't know why the Jets didn't start Vick and start the season off with him and then slowly work Geno Smith back into the offense. But they just kind of threw him out to the Wolves, and he fell on his face, and so now they have to try to revive their season somehow. That game last week, I'm not taking too much away from that, man. Steelers looked terrible. I mean, that was just such a fluke of a game.
You think so? It's funny because a couple weeks this season, I've been kind of back in the Jets' defense, and you kind of questioned me on that. And that's the one week where they actually played pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they did play pretty good, but I felt the Steelers just played terrible.
So fluky. How the hell did... And I gave up on the Jets' defense. I mean, their cornerbacks are all knocked out. Calvin Pryor's disappointed me this year. I thought he was going to be much better in that defensive backfield with the tutelage of Rex Ryan.
Yep.
But, hey, for 1 week they stopped the mighty Pittsburgh offense, which is pretty impressive. But getting back to the Jets wide receivers, I'm giving up on Percy Harvin. I mean, I would try to trade for him low, but what the hell? The week before, he looked pretty good. You'd think that he was going to be a pretty decent player for us. Bust again last week.
Well, and I'm seeing them using him. They're kind of using him still in that role of do they want to hand him the ball? Do they want to throw him the ball? He's not just actually straight up a receiver. Mm-hmm. And that's what he was bitching about in Seattle, is that he didn't want to be used that way. He's still kind of getting used that way in New York. So I don't know if he just can't understand the playbook fast enough or what it is. But I want to see him out there on a normal basis, blocking, doing everything that a receiver is supposed to do if he really wants to play a legit receiver position.
Well, to your point, they do have a bye week this week.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to help his stock? Would you be willing to trade for him at this point? If it wasn't for his reputation, he's droppable.
Yeah, I mean, just for his athletic ability alone, if for some reason they can work a way into, pretty much setting their offense up to exploit defenses because of his speed, if that is their game plan, then yes, he is definitely somebody worth keeping on your bench, keeping your eye on him and waiting for that week to blow up. It just hasn't been working for him at all this season. It didn't matter what Seattle did. He just didn't have it. I mean, it was so bad. It just must be a fluke because it's so bad that the one game he had three touchdowns. Every one of them were called back. So It's really weird season for Percy Harvin. A guy with that much speed, you would think would be a fantasy beast just because of the speed alone. He can take a 2-yard catch and make it a 10-yard catch, because he's so fast. So you think he should be doing good. I think right now, keep him on your bench. If you can trade off with somebody, I wouldn't trade too much for him, but try to get, like you said, a low value trade. Get him and just keep him on your bench because you never know what can happen. The guy's just got so much speed. You got to keep him on your team just because of that aspect.
Wow, interesting team there, the Jets. We'll see how they look coming out of the bye week. Good luck to them. It's strangely enough, they looked great last week. If they keep it up, maybe Rex Ryan's job can be saved after all. Let's finish off this episode by talking about Mark Sanchez. We have to give an update. We said that last week would really be one of those 50-50 games. It's either he can come in, look great under Chip Kelly, and now all of a sudden we have pretty good quarterback with some great fantasy players around him, or he could come out and do a butt fumble or pretty much, poop the bed.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. He had a decent game against not very good defense.
No.
It's a tougher game that he's running into this week against Green Bay, so that's going to be extremely interesting. As far as your Mark Sanchez update, guys, he went to Jordan Matthews early and often. We'll have to see if that sticks around for one more game. I don't totally trust it. In fact, last week I was saying that I thought maybe he would blow up with Riley Cooper because both of those guys have been around for 2 years. Jordan Matthews is brand new to the offense, but of course he's been around for a little bit now in his rookie season.
And like we already mentioned in this episode that Jordan Matthews was probably his main guy during practice. Mm-hmm. They had a good connection. You could tell they had chemistry. When Jordan Matthews was hitting his break, that's when Sanchez was throwing the ball. He's hitting him in stride. So, but Maclin is way too good a receiver not to be targeted. I mean, I think Sanchez just he played a good game. He spread the ball around. He threw to the guys that were open. He didn't necessarily key on a receiver. He sometimes you saw him going to his third look and getting rid of it. He had a ton of time to throw the ball. I still don't trust Mark Sanchez as from a fantasy standpoint yet. I need to see him play a little more under Chip Kelly and see if Chip Kelly is some type of quarterback guru. Because he made Nick Foles look great last year. Mm-hmm. This year it hasn't looked so good. He believes in Mark Sanchez. The whole team believes in Mark Sanchez, which is kind of odd to hear.
So far, so good.
It pretty much surprised me when that came out. So I don't know, man. I mean, I think maybe this is a good spot for him. And I felt, I was kind of pulling for him last week because this guy's been ran through the shitter, the media shitter for the butt fumble and everything else, and really has not played well. He had a horrible start to his season on a bad team. Maybe this is that redemption moment for Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, the cool thing about Mark Sanchez, he's always kind of held himself well. It's harder to tell when you're in New York City because a lot of people like to hate on those guys. But now that he's out of NYC, he's in Philly, which is, of course, more of a humble city as far as when you're doing good. Because if you're not doing good, you're going to get roasted.
It's not
so when you're doing good,
brotherly love when you're doing bad.
So he's got it rolling right now. And it's kind of cool to see that, hey, man, maybe this guy is actually a leader after all.
Yeah.
And nobody really gave him credit for that. Even though he would look stupid on field, he would panic sometimes. He always would say a lot of the right things, and that definitely gives him a leg up here in a situation where it certainly has everything going good for him. Great running backs. In fact, I like all three of their running backs there.
Yeah.
Great wide receivers. I think they're still underutilizing Riley Cooper and Zach Ertz. I mean, that's cool. When you have guys that they should be getting the ball more and other guys that are producing, that's always a good thing.
Wow, about Brent Selleck. He had like 119 yards receiving. That was like more than he's had all season, so
Probably
that's weird.
Another guy practicing with Mark Sanchez.
So how long does that last? Usually about 2 weeks, so maybe look at those guys again this week, but I wouldn't have too much hope. Going out the rest of the season, those primetime players will start getting a connection with them, and they will begin to take over.
I still think it's a downgrade for Jeremy Maclin. I mean, this guy was blown up in a big way, and I think that he's going to fall. He's going to become a wide receiver 2, if that, maybe even a wide receiver 3, because Mark Sanchez has some other guys he's going to be getting the ball. He's proven it already. We'll have to see how he does against the Packers, because that's going to be a shootout. He's going to have to pass it to Maclin if they're going to keep up.
Exactly.
Can't be throwing it to Jordan or Matthews every single play, right?
Or Selleck.
We'll see. Thank you guys for joining us. Good luck this week. Make sure to drop any comments, especially if you have any questions heading towards the playoffs or, of course, specifically this week. It's going to get crazy. Hopefully you have maybe Adrian Peterson's stash. Josh Gordon's coming back next week.
Oof.
Even Kyle Rudolph, that's a guy you might want to keep your eye on. He's going to be
Definitely.
coming back
Gets a lot of
hopefully this week
targets
or
and
next
everything.
week. Norv Turner tight end. That's a beast. He's just had injury issues, so he hasn't had that time to shine.
Still day to day, though.
I'm RJ for KMAC. Once again, good luck. Stay tuned here at Trippy Commentaries. We will always be covering fantasy football for you guys all year long. As always, stay trippy, my friends.
True.